I am a hero, not by my own accord, but because God has given me chances to showcase my faith in various storms in my life. Heroes are defined more by what they overcome than what they have accomplished. My name is Ashlee Leppert, and I'm a 14-year veteran of the United States Coast Guard, where I proudly served this country as a helicopter mechanic and rescue flight crew. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Romans 5:3. An excerpt from The Hurricane Within. The nose of the aircraft dipped slightly as we transitioned to a forward flight and began to beeline it to the convention center. I turned around to check all of the survivors. I had placed a young boy in my seat who must have been only 5 or 6 years old. He was alone and terrified, wearing nothing but a t-shirt and shorts. His thin little legs were shaking uncontrollably. I looked at him and spoke loudly so he could hear me over the roar of the storm. "You're sitting in the best seat in the house," I said. I gave him a big smile and grabbed his hand to comfort him. I placed a survival blanket over his trembling legs. This small gesture seemed to ease his mind. My attention quickly turned to the rest of my survivors. Because remember, it's not about the life circumstances that you've been dealt, but rather in which the way you smile and win the hand.
There are tales of Americans like Coast Guard Petty Officer Ashlee Leppert, who is here tonight in the gallery with Melania. Ashlee, we all thank you. Thank you very much.
What actually makes you a hero, in my opinion, is not the things that you accomplish, but the things that you overcome, because that's what makes you who you are. And I actually feel bad for those people that don't encounter struggles as much, because things aren't appreciated. The day-to-day blessings are overlooked, so I thank God for my struggles. And in that moment, I heard the Lord say to me, "Be still, my child, I've got something way bigger in store for you." I am heroic, bold in my faith, and have a positive perspective on life. And so can you. I want to share with you how.
My daughter's here right now.
Can I have one more card?
Of course.
Oh, how can you say no to that face? She can have anything.
Love you. Bye, baby girl. All right, y'all. So we're here with Ashlee Leppert, and my God, I got to meet you in person. Finally. I've had your book. I have listened to the audiobook and completely blown away to the point where I was like, where do we even begin?
I hope this is not underwhelming, at least, you know.
So I typically start off with 3 random questions.
I love it.
I don't know if you've heard any of my episodes. Sometimes I forget because I have ADD and that happens. But so the 3 random question thing is always really fun. So the first one that I'll throw at you is, who would play you in a movie?
It's funny because I get asked this quite a bit, and I, for some reason, go back to Charlize Theron because she's a tall, blonde, like...
That's a good one.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of like she could play me pretty well, but yeah, I would have to say her. Yeah,
I love
it's my
that.
top.
I love that. And you said you get asked that a lot. And I was like,
randomly,
why? It's because you got the book, dude.
And everybody's like, when's the movie coming out? I'm like, well, let me call my direct line to Hollywood really quick. I don't have one. So.
I have one.
Well, I mean, maybe you can work that angle for me. I don't know.
I'll help you with that, yeah. And if you do have a movie, I want to be an extra.
You could be one of my survivors in the basket.
Absolutely.
Done.
We're doing this.
Hey, it's set in stone. Let's do it.
So no, Charlize Theron, perfect. Yeah, she's from South Africa. Incredible actress. So yes, I could see that too. Okay, second question is, what is your spirit animal?
Ooh, well, I'm going to have to go with the cliche leopard, considering my last name is Leppert. And I love leopard print, literally everything. Clearly, as you can see today, I'm wearing pink, red, and black leopard print. So, kind of natural for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know why I didn't see that coming. But no, it makes sense in hindsight. So, okay, a leopard. No, I love that. Is that something that you've always identified since you were like a little girl, people trying to pronounce your last name?
Yes, I think that ever since I was little, the easiest way for me to describe to people my last name and how to spell it is leopard, like the animal, but with a T on the end. And then they can say leopard pretty simply. So
Gotcha.
It just helped me phonetically explain that to people.
I love that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, third question, and this is one that I typically ask authors such as yourself, and that is like, what is your go-to book? Like, what's the book that you always recommended to a friend before you were an author yourself?
Well, if I'm being honest and true to myself, my go-to book is the Holy Bible, straight up, because that is my life source. That is where I go to when I'm in trouble, when I'm happy, when I'm sad, just to kind of get guidance from my Creator. But also a very, very, very close second that was a game changer for me was Winning the War on Your Mind by Craig Groeschel. That's a game changer, especially for someone like me who's kind of struggled with a little bit of not mental illness, but just depression, anxiety, that sort of thing. So it's a game changer for learning how to defeat your inner self when you're doing that negative self-talk and, just kind of feeling down and out. That's a game changer for like rewiring your brain to...
I need that. I'm like,
telling you.
Bro, negative self-talk?
Yo.
I got a PhD in that.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's me.
Game changer, bro. Get that book called The Winning the War on Your Mind by Craig Groeschel, and it's pretty bold and it's pretty awesome to read anyway. I think so.
I love that, and I've never had that recommended, and so I'm definitely going to check that out. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, Ashlee, let's take it back to your childhood. That's how you start off the book, if I'm not mistaken. When you get to the end of a book, you have to like go back to the beginning a little bit. I'm like, what was the beginning again? I actually started thumbing through it again because, it's quite an amazing and an inspirational story. But what resonated with like your childhood with me is just the whole dynamic of your family, a lot of their trauma and their struggles. That really resonated with me, and so I was hoping you could kind of just bring us in on your life a little bit, where you grew up and how that dynamic played out.
All right, sure. We're going back to Cali. No, I'm just kidding. It's Detroit, Michigan.
It's Detroit, yeah.
That's where I'm born and raised. So I was born and raised in the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan. And truthfully, I had a pretty normal middle-class upbringing. We lived in a condo my whole life, so it was quaint, but, we didn't have a lot of money. My mom didn't drive, and my dad was pretty much the breadwinner of the household. Great parents. I didn't lack for anything. However, my mom was an alcoholic and my dad struggled quite a bit with substance abuse, so they did a really good job at hiding it, if I'm being honest. It wasn't until I was sort of in my younger teenage years I started to kind of pick up on some things that were curious to me, but my dad had a heart attack when I was in 6th grade, and of course he was prescribed everything under the book, and I think that he had a little bit of a substance issue prior to that, but I think that sort of elevated it, so he struggled with narcotics and opioids, and my mother's go-to was alcohol. She drank pretty much every single day since I could really remember. But again, they both have since passed, so it's very important to me to like reiterate to everybody that I talk to that they really were great parents, and they did the best they could, but they struggled with their own demons, and so unfortunately that's kind of the byproduct of not really dealing with issues, and you kind of seek therapy and substances. I'm sure, as we talked about, we've all been through that as well. So, but yeah, I was born and raised there, had a pretty normal upbringing, and graduated high school 2003, and in 2005 I joined the military, and really I've been back since, when I was stationed there, but not a whole lot really since, so.
Right, so with your parents not being there and how places change.
Yes.
Especially when you're in the military, because you get like huge snapshots of time. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
To everyone living there, it's their norm. It's such a slow burn, they don't really realize it. And then when you go back after 5-10 years, it's like you don't even recognize the place anymore.
It's crazy. Actually, I will say in like a positive perspective, Detroit, when I grew up, was really, really rough. I mean, you really kind of cautioned yourself even going downtown. But I will say nowadays there's been a lot of improvement as far as like, you know, you still have your ghetto areas, but I mean, like the arts district has really come along, and like just the economy itself has grown. But yeah, you're right. It's definitely a different dynamic when you're growing up there, and then when you go back, you're kind of like the same people doing the same thing, you know?
Yeah. So like when, you know, my childhood growing up, you know, drinking and pain pills and things like that were kind of a norm, right? So much so that like when I met like my wife's family, for instance, when they weren't drinking at like Thanksgiving, I was like, are they doing this because of me?
Right.
Like, but that was just their norm, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize like not surrounding all of your plans around alcohol like was a thing. Like I thought that was normal.
Same.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that just blew my mind, like in the military, meeting other people, hearing their stories, and then kind of taking that and then reflecting on your own story. And it's really eye-opening, like when you start having those long talks, especially like when you're in a job like yours where there's a lot of traveling and downtime, and it's like a hurry up and wait type of job. So you get to know people like super duper well, like the ins and outs of their whole life.
Absolutely, and it's crazy. I'll never forget my very first station was in Puerto Rico, and all I knew was Detroit, Michigan, right? So my very first station, I'm in
Dude, you went to Puerto Rico?
Yes, San Juan, Puerto Rico. Okay, like it was terrible, let me say. Like, I mean, come on, it was
Right.
like phenomenal, but like here I am, I'm 19 years old at the time, and I'm meeting not only a different culture, you know, I'm around a Spanish-speaking population, and then I deal with all these people that are from Georgia and California and middle of nowhere Tennessee, and everybody's so different. But it's such a blessing though, because it made me appreciate different cultures and diversity and getting to know people and realizing that everybody does have a different upbringing, and you know, you get to learn a lot without judging initially.
Yeah, and you really bond with people because like in the back of our heads we all know that our time with these folks are limited, so we're more prone to just being open and transparent. You know what I
Yes.
mean? That's probably my favorite thing about joining is like, hey, we're all moving, so like might as well just go like, you know,
Yes.
off the deep end with this stuff. And it was just a blast. So in your time in Puerto Rico, you did have a major setback. So one thing that me and you have in common is we both were in a place where alcohol was served to younger folks. You know, in Guam for me, it was 18. And to be that young and to be in such a fun place so early, I just got lucky. Actually, I wouldn't even say I got lucky. I got in trouble quite a bit.
Yeah.
I got lucky that I didn't get kicked out. And I never had a DUI, and I'll tell you why. I couldn't afford a car.
Blessing in disguise, brother.
I swear to you. I took the shuttle. There's a shuttle bus on base that would take you downtown.
Nate's told me all about it.
And I would stick to that shuttle. Now, have I ever been in a car where folks have been drinking? Absolutely. But me personally, I never could afford to.
You know what? And maybe I shouldn't have had a vehicle. I think that was the problem.
That was the problem.
I mean, I think for me, I was that DUI actually was a blessing in disguise. I look back and I was on a very, very bad path. And I think, as you can probably relate to, when you have an instance like that, you can either say, wow, I need to wake up and realize this is a life-changing event. I'm going to either go on a positive route or I'm going to keep going right down the same road. And for me, I really feel like it was an eye-opening experience. I was like, wait a second, this is not me. I'm being reckless with my life and the life of people that I'm around, and it's just not who I am. So I took that instance and I was like, all right, I'm going to lick my wounds and make my reputation clean again and really show people that it was a one-time deal and I'm not just that, you know, shitbag, for lack of a better term,
Right.
that like needs to be just weeded out of the military. You know, we've
Right.
all seen those as well.
Yeah, so I thought it was really awesome that you had the opportunity to continue to serve.
Me too.
Because there's I'd say 9 times out of 10 that doesn't happen. And so like, how did you get that second chance?
Honestly, I think it is by the grace of God, first and foremost. And secondly, I really did work hard. I was a really good airman. I mean, even though it was grunt work, painting walls, doing dishes, pulling weeds, whatever job they gave me, I really tried to work really, really hard. So I think I made a very good name for myself. So when it came down to that instance, I think a lot of people had my back and went to bat for me because they knew that it was a mistake and that I clearly was regretful of what happened. So I think between God's plan for my life and people going to bat for me, I think really those were the only two things, and my integrity, because the second that it happened, I owned up to it. I, didn't try to skate my way out of it. I said, hey, I messed up and I'm willing to pay the consequences. And people kind of looked at me with a little more respect in that way, so.
Right, no, I love that. And so me personally, I'm the type that I've always struggled with criticism, and I already beat myself up. So had that happened to me, I know I never would have bounced back out of that personally. So how do you think you found it within yourself to rise above that? Because that's not easy, being in the spotlight where everyone's, calling you a shitbag. You feel bad.
Yeah.
And it just compounds it 10 times worse when everyone knows what happened, and you just feel like the spotlight's on you at all times. How did you go from that to where you're at now? How did you mentally get past that?
Well, it was terribly hard. I'm not going to sit here and say it was all peaches and cream, because it was hard. I mean, I was down on myself for quite a while, but really, again, I just knew that was not me. I knew that I was better than that, and I was not going to let the opinions of other people dictate my future. And I think that's something that I still, even to this day, focus on, because who doesn't have those moments of doubt or that fear of judgment? Especially, I mean, let's look at the situation. I was a female. I was kicked out of my squadron in training, aviation training, for a DUI, and then I get sent to a boat unit. So here I am, this dirtbag female aviator. I mean, I don't think there could have been many more things against me.
Right,
and
yeah.
I just really wanted to prove myself, because I knew I was better than one mistake. And I just was not going to let the spirit of fear kind of control my future and my destiny. So I just said, you know what, you can say everything you want, that's okay, but in 6 months from now, I want you to reevaluate that decision about how you think about me, because I'm going to get every single qualification I can. I'm going to work overtime. I'm going to paint walls. I'm going to sound fuel tanks, whatever you need me to do, but I'm going to do it better than you could have ever expected. And I did that, and I think I earned my respect back, basically.
Wow. No, I love that. I love that you just came back.
Yeah.
It's like you got fired up and pissed off.
I did, at myself.
And then you use that, to better yourself.
100%.
When it comes to Star Wars terminology, I call that tapping into the dark side. You know what I'm saying?
So true. It was Eye of the Tiger. That was me singing that to myself, don't you give up, don't you, and then,
just screaming at yourself in the mirror like David Goggins does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, when I read that you bounced back from that, I was like, dang, that's one of those success stories. And I think you had this I'm a spiritual person, you know what I'm saying? So I felt like you had this higher calling that helped get you to where life needed you to be, at the right place at the right time. You know what I'm saying? Dude,
without a doubt. I didn't grow up with religion. I didn't grow up being forced into any type of faith. I mean, we talked about God and things like that, but I had the luxury of finding faith and truth on my own. And when you find that and then realize your purpose, man, I know my guardian angels were there, and I've, trusted God, and that obedience and that just release of control over your life is really just beautiful when you kind of break it all down.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned a lot in your book, that as an adult that has a lot of 17 years active duty service as of now, purpose is one of those things that change our entire life, that fill us with love and energy and that fearlessness that we need to get to the next level, but we don't always have the opportunity to have that purpose. So when you do get it, you need to dive all in. You know what I mean?
So true, man. I think as human beings, we have the innate ability to try to discover purpose. Why are we alive? What is Earth about? What is our, all these questions that happen. And the beautiful thing is I realized is when you just have faith, and when you just release that and trust that God is going to work through your life, like he shows you. Like I'm not sitting before you or anybody else talking about my faith because I'm a religious person that just believes what's told to me. No, like I live it, I see it, I've watched miracles happen in my life, and that's why I feel so passionate about sharing that, because I would be doing a disservice to the people that I love in this community, in this country, if I didn't talk about how important that is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I love that you're just like 100% you.
That's it.
You know what I mean? Like you have
but
to
people
earn
relate
that.
to real, man. Like I could sit here and
Right.
tell you all the perfect things, but like that's why I wrote my story, is to like tell you the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
And like I am nobody. I am an ordinary person that God has used to do extraordinary things, and that's what God does with people. It's beautiful.
It is, and yeah, you're proof. You're definitely proof of that. One thing I also loved about the book was that I didn't know what coasties were. You know what I'm saying? And like you, in the beginning, you talk about the jokes people make about the Coast Guard,
Yes.
which still goes on to this day.
For sure.
Like I just watched, Space Force, the show on Netflix, and the Coast Guard, they keep kicking him out of the meetings, like out of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They're like, "What are you doing
Yeah.
here? Like, get out!" And he's like, "Dang it!" And so like those jokes still happen to
For
this day.
sure.
I've heard them, but at the same time, like most of us don't know any coasties, so it's like I hear about them, but I truly don't know why it's happening.
We're like unicorns, man. Just saying.
But the truth of the matter is, a coastie is one of the reasons I joined.
That's awesome.
Because I haven't really spoke about my religious background, but because that means something to you, I'll bring it up. So I was a born again Christian at like 18. Yeah, I got baptized at 18 by a guy named Chris Rodenheiser
Awesome.
in Virginia, amazing youth pastor. But there was a coastie there, and he was deploying to like Afghanistan. And I remember thinking, like, you're deploying? Like, you're in the Coast Guard. Like, that's
Yeah.
a thing. And he was like, yeah, but he was just such an awesome guy. His name was Damien. I don't remember his last name, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
the first name's so unique. Mm-hmm. A coastie out there might know him. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna have to spread the word. Coast Guard Damien, where are you?
Where is Damien? But the guy was just so sharp and like such a good person that, he's one of the reasons I joined, because I wanted to be like him.
That's
Like the
awesome.
way I felt about him and looked up to him, I wanted to be that for others. And so a coastie is one of the people that ushered me into the Air Force.
That's an awesome story, man. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, all jokes aside, I know we're like the redheaded stepchildren of the military, and that's cool, but like that's why it was very important to me also to share my story, is like, my faith aside, my hurricane rescues aside, everything I've been through in my life, if just the takeaway is learning about Coast Guard, in particular aviation, because we're such a small sector, like it was important for me just to share with the public, because the media, I mean, clearly, as you know, anybody can turn on the news and see it's bogus half the time. So like a lot
I
of
don't
people
even watch
just
it.
Nope, same. Yeah, nope.
I get the cliff notes from my dad, and he's all fired up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't even really honestly pay much attention
Right.
to it. But like, for example, like during the hurricane rescues and stuff, like, I mean, they try to paint a solid picture, but I really wanted to share from a person who was doing the rescues from my perspective, just so people could hear and see and feel, what it was like, and that we're not just out there giving people tickets on the water when they're drunk,
Right.
We have a little bit more of a diversity than that, so.
Absolutely, and one thing I appreciate about the Coast Guard is that you protect the homeland. And my dad, I told you, he was in the National Guard.
That's awesome.
And it has a similar mission, if you would,
Definitely, yeah. We're definitely multi-mission. I mean, I've done every sort of mission from search and rescue, which is primary, but search and rescue, drug interdiction, law enforcement. I mean, I haven't even touched on the stuff in my first book that I did, TADs down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and shooting out drug runners on boats and stuff like.
Oh, wow.
And my husband now laughs at me because, like, I was in the Air Force for 20 years and I didn't even go on one deployment. You did way more crazy stuff than I did. So we joke about that, you know, so.
Yeah, that is funny. But yeah, how you painted Coast Guards, like, just, if your goal was to educate and inspire about the Coast Guard, then I'd say you hit the mark.
Thank you.
Because I've been in 17 years, I didn't know squat about it. I'm just geographically haven't really been around them much. But I absolutely love the Coast Guard. I have a huge respect for them.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you for bringing us into that world and painted that picture for us so that we know, like, I mean, it's there's just so many incredible things that like y'all were doing. I really don't think you get enough credit.
Thank you for that. And honestly, I mean, as you know, I'm only as good as my team. I'm only as good as the people I work with. And I just appreciate you saying that first and foremost. But like, interagency, we can give each other some crap and all the jokes, but reality is like we're all here to serve our country, protect, save lives. I mean, at the end of the day, we all have the same heart and the same mission, hopefully, in mind. So it's just kind of a different piece of land that everybody's working on, so we're just happen to be on the borders of the U.S., keeping people safe and saving people in trouble. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Hell yeah. So let's talk about Hurricane Harvey.
That's it.
Hurricane Harvey. You were saving lives, and it's like it was like a whirlwind, like reading, like I had trouble like navigating, like, okay, what day is this, where are you at now? Like I can't imagine actually being there, so I was just hoping, I know this is a lot to ask, run us through Hurricane Harvey.
Nope, that's totally fine. So as you know, just like anybody, we just do a lot of training, right? Training for missions. We do search and rescue training, boat operations, and we had all prepared for a moment like this, and I happened to be the one that was on duty, which, as you know, being on call for 24 hours or whatever the mission is. So I happened to be the helicopter on crew that day, and at 3 a.m, my pilot called me and said, hey, we're going out to Hurricane Harvey, pack your bag. And everybody was acutely aware of what was going on, because I think preemptively people were like, oh, it's just going to hit land and kind of go away. And we really, I guess, didn't plan for as big as a disaster as it ended up being. So I literally packed a couple pair of dry socks in my flight bag, a couple granola bars, and maybe, my toothbrush, and I was out the door. And then, boom, it was like 5 days later, and I kind of woke up like, what just happened? Yeah. So literally we flew into the airspace. So all that happened in 5 days? Yes.
Okay, because like it's hard to even grasp like time-wise,
yes,
like how long of all these rescues and situations, like it was hard as a reader to be like, how long are you in this storm?
Yeah, I believe if my timeline is correct, the hurricane hit landfall Saturday evening, and at which point I got called in at Saturday at 3 a.m, and we made it out there by sunrise, and we actually landed our first fuel stop in Beaumont, Texas, which actually ended up being hit the worst out of all the spots. And I remember telling my pilot, like, this is pretty bad. We should just stay here. Why are we flying all the way to the Houston airspace? But anyways, we just do what we're told in the military. And so it was instantly, the second we got into the airspace, it was all these calls from sector command control, basically saying, go to this GPS position, go here, this person. It was just like nonstop. And so we were primarily focused initially on the obviously the most extreme cases, people that were basically gonna die if we didn't get there ASAP, and everybody else that was just kind of wet and uncomfortable could just chill out for a little while. But then that, like typical hurricanes, will hit the coast and then kind of dissipate a little bit. This one, Hurricane Harvey, for some reason just sat and rained and dumped for 2 days longer than kind of was planned. So
So how are these folks getting your help? Like if they're stranded on a bridge, like somewhere on a bridge.
Yes.
How would you know that there's people there that need help? Are they using their cell phone to dial 911? Do you just fly around and look? How does that happen?
So there's quite a few different ways. I think initially it was 911 calls that were directed to our operations center, and then they reach us on the helicopter, through our comm system, and tells us the GPS location. But it came to a point where cell phones were dead, no electricity was out there, so people were out there waving towels and taking off their shirts on rooftops and waving them. And at some point, people were using Facebook and throwing out, GPS locations, and we were never usually allowed to use our cell phones, obviously flying, but there came a point where like our rescue swimmer in the back was just like, hey, I'm seeing coordinates here, hey, we're getting a call here. So it was kind of like a free-for-all the first couple days. Just whoever was needing our help, we kind of made sure we tried to get there.
Yeah, it's amazing how like certain things just like go out the window, like when a real world situation happens.
Exactly. You can only train so much, right? Like, and the rest is like you have to adapt and overcome. That's we have to have that resiliency, especially in the aircraft. Like if you're not making quick split-second decisions, like there's people's lives on the line there.
Yeah, and so your role in all this is you are lowering, like basically the mechanism that picks people back up, and you're stabilizing that cable. and there's a swimmer down there who loads the people up. So it's like a three-man job in a way.
Correct. So basically the easiest way for me to describe it is I'm like the middleman of the operation. I'm telling the pilots, like, I also have to have a 360-degree view of trees, power lines, all obstacles. So I'm telling the pilots up front, you know, hold position, you're descending, easy forward right, easy back and left, whatever the case may be. All the while, I'm looking down at the rescue swimmer, making sure that, you know, the cable is straight, that I have enough cable down, not enough cable, not too much cable, because it could get wrapped around obstacles. So it's, you have to be able to very well assess your surroundings and make quick decisions.
You have to be a good communicator.
Yes.
I mean, my God, you're the eyes and the ears of the pilot and the rescue swimmer.
Correct.
Yeah, like you're in both their blind spots.
Correct. Absolutely.
Wow.
No pressure, right? No pressure.
But yeah, I love that dynamic. Like, I never knew that was a thing. And now I'm thinking, like, and then I thought, who are these rescue swimmers?
Yeah.
They sound like they're just beast mode.
They really are.
Like, who are these people? We need to meet these people. But no, I was really impressed with, like, dudes just swimming around down there. Like, I thought that was, like, so crazy. I'd never heard of that.
Yep.
I always assumed they were, like, going down with you, I guess. Like, you were lowering them down. I guess that's what you do, right? And then they swim around at that point and start rallying everybody, loading them up safely and then pulling them up. But there's times where they're meeting you at a spot.
Yeah, there's quite a few different deployments, is which we call it, but there's the kind where they can stay connected to the hook and kind of swim around, but still connected to the line. And there's other times where it's called a harness deployment, where they disconnect the harness, they go swim, get the survivor, the person in need, and then bring them back to me. At which point that I'll already have brought the cable up, hooked up a litter or a basket, and got it right back down to them. So it's kind of like you got to meet that sweet spot where they can get the survivors to you at the right time.
Yeah, wow. Lots of teamwork, lots of communication.
100%.
I learned a lot about a helicopter as well, and their limitations. I didn't realize, like, how quickly they overheat and they're very vulnerable to weight, like, more than I thought. You know, you see this big, powerful machine, you wouldn't think picking up people could throw this thing off, but any little deviation in the weight shift can really screw this helicopter up, make it overheat. And you were saying, like, certain, you know, and under normal circumstances, it getting overheated or overweight bearing would cause, like, extra inspections that year. And y'all were, like, way past that.
Oh, for sure. Like,
you know what I mean?
I mean, so to be fair, my helicopter that I specialized in was the short range recovery MH-65 Dolphin. So it's like a little tin can in the air compared to, like, the 60s, which are, you know, Black Hawks and, you know, any type of large scale helicopters. These are like the tiny ones with the tiny cabins. So we're very weight dependent, and that's a big cautionary factor for us, is especially bringing on extra people and patients that were like, hey, how's our fuel level? So that's something that the pilots and me as the flight mechanic are constantly checking, like weight, time, and all that matters. Otherwise, if we put too much weight in the helicopter, we're not going to be able to have enough force to properly exit a hover.
And there's all sorts of hazards, power lines, and the wind, and them stabilizing it in the wind as they're lifting a person. Like, these are super talented people. Like,
100%. My cruise blew my mind. I was so amazed at the synergy. Like, that's such a military word, man. But I mean, I'm not like, that's like, ooh, synergy. But, like, it was so true, man. Like, the pilots were on point. My rescue swimmer was on point. Like, I was back there just like bing, boom, boom. Like, it was such a well-oiled machine, and it's just a testament to all of the training that we do.
Yeah. And there was that one amazing moment where you had, like, a litter of children, right? Like, you saved all those babies and they were all staring back at you.
That is something that, like, honestly, that picture is envisioned in my head and burnt in my memory forever. Like, it was such
Could you run us through, like, that situation and how it made you feel?
Sure. Well, so this was day 2 of all the rescues, which actually was a lot worse than day 1, believe it or not. But I was sent out on a later afternoon or early evening search and rescue mission, and we were called out to this area that was, for some reason, and I still to this day don't know why, but it was a highly populated area with children with medical conditions, and it looked like it was a subdivision, like a cul-de-sac, but it could have been I don't know, a special needs home, whatever, I'm not really sure, but we got called to this area, and my rescue swimmer, I lowered him down, and at this point in time, the winds were whipping, you have rain coming in, you have malfunctioning, avionics, and I mean,
like
it
the
was
helicopter's getting destroyed.
like destroyed, basically. Yeah. But we tried to do everything within safety limitations, of course. But at this point, it's just like your mic's getting smacked with wind and rain. You're trying to communicate with the pilot. You've got, chaos happening below you. And at this point, people are desperate to get to safety. So this was, I think, the second lowering of the basket to pick up people. And I'm looking down there at my rescue swimmer trying to keep the pilot in position. And I noticed that he kept putting what looked to me at the time, because I'm 150 feet up in the air with whipping rain, so I can only have so much visibility. So it looked to me like it was a bunch of bundles of clothing or something. And I'm like thinking to myself, why is my rescue swimmer like saving this woman's clothes? Like, we don't have fuel for this. Like, what is he doing?
So you thought it was like personal belongings?
Correct. So she sat in there first, and I saw him putting like bundles of what looked to me like clothes that I just assumed.
Right.
But anyways, again, going back to that synergy word, I just trusted my swimmer down there.
I'm going to call this episode Synergy with Ashlee Leppert.
But seriously, I just trusted my swimmer down there, and I was like, well, I don't get it, but whatever he's doing down there is for purpose. And so I ended up hoisting the mother up with what I thought was bundles of clothing. I lowered the hook down really quick to get my rescue swimmer, because we had like only a couple minutes to get out of there before we were going to be out of fuel soon. So I got my swimmer up really quick, and as we were bolting to the drop-off zone, I'm now assessing my patients. Okay, how is everybody doing? I'm giving people blankets, and all of a sudden, what I thought to be bundles of clothing were little babies wrapped up in these little blankets and raincoats, and I mean, even as I tell you this story right now, I just get head-to-toe chills, because there was a mother and four babies in that basket, and it just was like profound to me, the mission that we were doing at that moment.
Right, like that's one of those moments where you're truly saving like these people's lives. Like, there's nothing that like brings the word life to our mind more than like the sight of a child. You know what I mean? Like, like that's life defined, right? They got their whole life ahead of them. And so I can't even imagine how that felt, like having all those children relying on you for survival, to live out the rest of their lives. And it's kind of hard to like wrap your head around.
Honestly, when you put it like that, it's so profound that I can't really, it gets me emotional, like to think. Because in the military, as you know, we have a mission. When we complete it, awesome job, well done, we go home. We don't really think a whole lot into it, at least I didn't. But when you say it like that, and to know that people are walking around today on the planet because of my bravery and my crew's bravery, it's a lot, honestly, to think about.
I mean, think about like the lives that person's going to impact, the friendships, their children. Yeah. Like the waves of lives that you guys changed is astronomical in the grand scheme of time.
Are you trying to get me to cry right now? Because
it's
I'm tearing up, man.
Yeah,
it's
that's
kind of
the
working.
synergy.
I feel the synergy, bro.
Okay, that's what it is.
Interagency synergy.
That's 100% what I'm tapping into. Okay. 35 minutes.
Oh, we're doing great.
Yeah, I think it ends at 43.
Okay,
so, and I'm going just through the book in my mind here, if you can't tell.
That's great.
Okay, so let's roll into the White House. Now, I'm an annual award winner in the Air Force. I was a 12 Outstanding Airman for a MAGCOM. That's one step away from the entire Air Force.
Wow.
So I got to go to the ceremony and see the winners of the Air Force, but I got to go to all these trips, and so I know the amount of teamwork and bullets and package writing and all the insane amount of work that goes into putting one person in that spot.
Yes.
And so I do know the behind the scenes a bit, but like when I see that you get honored at the White House, I don't know how that's even possible. How did that happen?
I mean, people can laugh at me when I say this, but like that's a God thing right there. Like, I'm not even kidding you. Like, I can't even tell you to this day how I am the specific person. I know that there was quite a few people whose names were in for it because, again, I mean, we all did some amazing rescues, and as you know, it's not just one person out there. It's like teamwork, crew, the whole crew. But I think the only thing that made me a little bit different is I had done many flight days. And a lot of people did like one flight day and they would be bagged out or they would be done. But I got to fly on 3 different days. So I think my name kind of just kept coming up like a part of some really good rescues and some really crazy missions. So yeah, I got the invitation, and I truly, when I first got the phone call, I actually thought somebody was playing a prank on me.
Right.
I think I talked about that in my book, where I was just like,
I mean, who wouldn't? Like,
right? I mean,
like, hey, I'm with this is Jet from the White House.
Yeah,
I
like,
can't remember. That's not what it said. But.
No, for sure. Like little old me, like
Right.
from nowhere, Michigan. Again, like an
Right.
ordinary person getting put in an extraordinary position.
No, I love that happened to you. I think it was so deserving, and I think it also came at a time where like you needed it the most. You know what I mean?
It's so crazy, yeah.
Because you were suffering with the autoimmune disorder.
Yes.
I have one.
No
so
way.
I told you we were a lot in common.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have hypothyroidism.
Okay.
Which causes, depression, weight gain, sluggishness, fogginess. So I have to make a lot of lifestyle choices to try to avoid that. Even the medication doesn't quite ever get you there.
I get it, yep.
You know what I mean? It's like you feel it forever.
And it's hard to explain to people too. It's like, because you look at me and I look at you and I'm like, oh yeah, we're both healthy people. There's nothing wrong. And I think that was, for me, a hurdle to try to explain to people, no, like, I feel like my muscles are shutting down. I feel extremely weak and tired. And like, you can only kind of chalk that up for so long as like, oh, I'm stressed out. Like if you have no stress in your life and you're still dealing with that, like maybe there's an issue.
Yeah, there was times where like your body gave out, and I can't imagine how terrifying that would be when you're trying to save someone. Oh. And then your own body starts to give out, and like you don't want to let your team down, you don't want to let those people down. Oh. That's terrifying. I mean, there can't be anything worse than that feeling that you went through. And so I'm so glad you finally found a specialist, because my God, like when you keep bouncing around with doctors, you'll never get an answer. They'll never figure it out.
No.
So I'm so thankful that.
Thank you.
Yes, because I've been through that rabbit hole, and I was like, oh my God, she figured it out. Thank God.
Thank you. It was,
And so you were getting medically boarded for this, and this news came at that time when you were kind of like trying to picture your life outside the military. So I think there was something spiritual to that, because
I'm telling you,
it came at like the best time to honor you and your team and what you guys did. But just run me through that White House experience, like when they gave you a standing ovation, like the look on your face is just like, I'm just so happy for you when I see that, because I know your story.
Thank you.
So when I see your face and I know how genuine you are, and I know to honor you that way is just incredible. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you. And, it's still to this day very uncomfortable for me to like talk about myself in a way that, might seem prideful, or I just really try to stay humble, because I know that I am a very ordinary person, that God has put me in some pretty extraordinary positions, and all I did was excel and do my job, truly. And it was very important for me the entire time in the White House, whether I was speaking to President Trump, the First Lady, no matter who I spoke to, it was very important for me to emphasize on the fact that, yes, I did some amazing things, but I'm here on behalf of my crews. I'm here on behalf of everybody that was out there, whether they were in the operations center, whether they were doing maintenance or flying, whatever it was. Like, I could not have done the rescues by myself. And so that was very important for me to convey. I just happened to be the one person, because they couldn't send, 200 people there. I just happened to be the one face for everybody. But it truly was the most humbling experience that I've ever been through. And honestly, I know that I was put in that position to use that little bit of a platform to not only talk about Coast Guard aviation, but to talk about my faith and just plant seeds of how I was able to get through everything and up until this point too.
Absolutely. It's like the spiritual world, like that, makes magic happen.
Oh, and it happens,
like,
man.
Put you, it was just like the most picture perfect way to end your time in the service, to basically let you speak on it for the rest of your life.
Yes, that is so true. And honestly, like, in that moment, like, here, I'll tell you a funny story backing up. So when I got the invitation and all that crazy stuff, I literally thought that I was going to the State of the Union as like back of the row, peanut gallery.
Just like an invite.
Yeah, just like a guest, right? Not like an honored person that the president was going to speak about like within the first 5 minutes of his speech. Like this totally was like oblivious to me. So when I started walking into the Capitol building, I realized like, oh my gosh, they put me next to the second lady. Melania Trump is 3 people down from me. Like, so I looked over at the second lady and I was like, okay, I'm kind of, at this point we had already met, so I could kind of talk freely with her, but I was like, Miss Second Lady, like, is there a specific way for me to handle if he speaks about me in his speech? Because now I'm starting to get like concerned that I'm underprepared kind of thing.
Well, yeah, like look who you're sitting next to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I asked her, thank God that I asked her, because she told me the proper protocol was to stay seated during a standing ovation, which thank God she said that, because literally 10 minutes later I was like, okay, I got to stay seated. He's talking about me.
Wow. Yeah. I heard another podcast you were on where you guys were joking about that. How like you were like, I know I'm supposed to stay seated, but this is kind of awkward that I have to stay seated.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I had so many people, like, of course, you got the keyboard warriors, that were like, oh, why'd you stay seated? You look so disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, the second lady told me to stay seated, so I'm pretty sure she knows what's
Well, otherwise you wouldn't know who they're honoring.
Oh, exactly, that's the point, because
everyone would be looking around like, who is this person?
Right, and there was people after me that got a standing ovation, and they stood with the crowd, and so, of course, they blended in. Nobody really knew who they were, like, clapping at, so I get it now, of course.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that made me chuckle a little bit, too. It's just one of those unexpected things.
For sure.
But no, very beautiful moment.
Yes.
Just such an amazing way to end your service. Okay, final thoughts.
Well, I will first of all say thank you very much for getting me on your podcast. This is really awesome. Honored to be here. I have a website, so if anybody wants to come on there to purchase an autographed copy of my book or to talk to me about speaking at an event that they're hosting, they can go to ashleeleppert.com.
Hell yeah, and I'm going to hit you up because I'm right down the road. So yes, I will hit you up for that.
Awesome.
And I just want to tell you thank you from the bottom of my heart for being you, for being 100% Ashlee Leppert, kicking ass and taking names, making us so proud to be veterans, so proud to serve, because your book is just a testament at what veterans are capable of, and I was completely blown away by your story and who you are, and I'm so honored to know you in person, get to hang out with you at Black Rifle Coffee, and so I just want to thank you as well from the bottom of my heart for spending time with me and my family tonight.
Yes, it was so awesome to meet you and your wife and your 2 beautiful kids, so this was awesome and we should do it again. We
are doing it again. We're going to do a part 2.
Yeah.
After the storm, we'll talk about PTSD, depression, the after effects that I didn't get to ask you now that I would assume are probably a part of your life, and I'd be curious to know, how you cope with those things. So how about we do a part 2 and we'll hit on those topics.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. That sounds great.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.